Us in the studio is Michael Fabricant, the one and only Conservative Member of Parliament for Lichfield in Staffordshire. He's served the area for nearly 30 years, and doesn't he look well for it? Welcome, Michael. Thank you very much. How are you?
I'm very well indeed, he said, probably about to cough. No, very well indeed.
Oh, we can't have that. I hope you took your temperature on the way in.
I did.
OK, look, so some people might say the only reason that a lot of Labour MPs are against this idea of second jobs is because they're against wealth creation in general.
Well, I think a lot of Labour MPs probably are unemployable and can't even get a job for anybody, and that's why they're miffed. But you've got to bear in mind they're also you've got two by-elections coming up, and really one of the reasons why this has been hitting the headlines constantly for the last few days, or weeks really, is because of these two by-elections. I think Keir Starmer feels, nervous that if they don't do well, his own position could be threatened.
But should Keir Starmer be feeling too nervous? Because we've seen actually Labour go up in the polls in a way that we haven't seen for a very long time, and Labour sort of beating the Conservatives in the opinion polls at the moment. So this is clearly cutting through to lots of voters, actually.
It is, Mercy, and it's very worrying to backbench Conservative MPs, particularly those, of course, in the Red Wall. In other words, those in the northeast of England, in constituencies which have only just gone Conservative, and some of them with very small minorities. And last night, the Prime Minister came to the 1922 committee, which I attended. Now, that committee was formed in 1923, so nobody's too sure why it's called the 1922 committee.
There's already a lack of honesty there.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's a committee where it's basically not a committee. It's basically the meeting that we hold every week, and we have various guests coming. And yesterday rather, was the Prime Minister, and who spoke to us.
How much can you tell us about what was said behind closed?
Well, he actually said, didn't he say he handled it badly with the Owen Paterson suspension row, and actually he would have done it differently if he could go back?
Yeah, I mean, he said we'd been driving well on course, ahead in the polls. We had a great conference up in Manchester. I can't remember much of it because I was drinking too much through those 3 or 4 days. But, well, at least I'm honest on GB News. But, and then suddenly the car went off the track, and, we've had to be pulled out of the ditch. That was the analogy he used. Yeah, I mean, I did say I spoke... Patrick.
Sorry, you did. Yeah, I must say, you absolutely did me there. Well done. Right, carry on.
Thank you. But I said last night to him, of course it was a mistake. He admits it's a mistake. But, the motives were good. And what were the motives? The motives were loyalty, compassion for a guy whose wife had died, and just being a decent human being. And actually, you don't often get that in Prime Ministers, so I actually thought it was rather sweet, although politically inept, that he did it.
I mean, look, there's a few issues at play here, I think, for Boris, isn't there, really? I think there's the fact that a lot of people thought he might be better at handling illegal immigration. That clearly hasn't happened. What's happening in the
That was discussed, by the way, sorry to interrupt, but that was discussed quite a lot in the meeting last night.
What was?
And people saying, look, this illegal immigration, the boat problem, for months and months and months, you've had the Home Secretary and others saying we're going to deal with it, but it hasn't been dealt with yet. And, I mean, Boris fully admitted that this is a real problem and that it's something that he wants to address quickly and swiftly. Now, there is new legislation coming through, but that won't come through for 6 months. And he said, but watch this space. And I think an announcement might be made in the next couple of weeks about something. We'll see.
OK.
I mean, I've read in the paper, I mean, he didn't mention it last night, I read in the paper about sending people to Albania.
Well, yeah, we'll discuss that later, yeah. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, will the Albanians accept it? And the other problem will be is if you get the human rights brigade. Actually, that sounds a little unkind because we need human rights. But whether you get people now getting a judicial review and stopping it from happening in the courts.
Yeah, I think just so just what I was kind of saying before, really, which is about the illegal immigration. He's not got to grips with that by definition. He hasn't yet, anyway. The big green agenda, I don't think anyone really signed up for that, did they? Certainly didn't really sign up for the amount of money it might cost people like you and I and you. And then on top of that as well, you've got allegations of sleaze. Do you think it's fair to say that a lot of the public think that Boris Johnson isn't the man they thought he was?
I think they're disappointed with the way things have progressed over the last few months. And of course, you know, the Twitterati, some of whom are very right-wing, will say, oh, you know, he's not the guy we voted for and all the rest of it. But, you know, a lot of people voted for him to get Brexit done.
Yeah.
And we did get it done.
Yeah.
And other countries, I read the New York Times, and when you see what's happening in the US, when you see what's happening in Europe, you realise that actually things are a lot better here. And as for things like the green agenda, well, other countries are doing it too. You know, life has moved on, I'm afraid, and it is an issue that we're having to address.
And one issue many people think politicians aren't addressing enough is terrorism in this country. We were talking about immigration just there, and obviously we saw what happened in Liverpool with the Liverpool bomber luckily not killing any members of the public. But people are saying, hang on, this guy's asylum claim was rejected. He was still in the country several months later. He had the time. I think the reports this morning was that he was planning this bomb, making this bomb since April of this year. And people will be saying, why aren't politicians facing up, you know, head on to this problem? They kind of skirt around it. They don't want to call out, you know, Islamist terrorism for what it is. What do you say to that?
I say that we've got to admit there is a problem with, as you say, Islamist terrorism, and there is an issue with some people who are Muslim who choose to go down this direction. Now, you don't want to generalise. I never generalise about religions, races or anything else, because that's plainly very foolish. But I know, having been a broadcaster before I became an MP, even then there was huge restrictions on what people felt they could say and what they don't. And frankly, if you don't call it out, it won't stop. And we've got to be brave. And when I've called it out on Twitter sometimes and said, you know, these people are doing such and such a thing because of their religion, maybe a perverted view they have of what their religion is calling them to do, I've been criticised for that. But you know what? I think it's wrong not to call it out. It's something that people have to accept. You don't hear so much about Jewish extremism or Christian extremism. There is an issue, and leaders, many leaders in society, in mosques and all the rest of it, they have a role to play. Many of them are calling for people to behave responsibly, but some are not. And I think as a nation, we have to address this. Maybe the French have gone too far, but they've certainly addressed it. Of course, they make it illegal to wear a burqa. Would we do that in Britain? Should we do that in Britain? I'm not sure about that.
Just lastly, something we're going to be talking about a bit later on, a little bit, slightly off topic. I was kind of wondering what your thoughts are. You mentioned there about rights, human rights. Should we be boycotting the Qatar World Cup, do you think? It's very nice that we've qualified, isn't it? But that's a human rights cesspit, isn't it? If we care about human rights, we care about LGBT community, we care about women's rights, we can't be going to the Qatar World Cup, can we?
Well, I mean, it's not something I've thought about. Of course, we did boycott I think we boycott the Moscow Olympics. I think we did. I'm not sure. Can you remember?
No, I wasn't.
This is a great trick, by the way. Is when you're asked the question, you don't know the answer.
Throw another one back. He's a skilled operator. This guy. Look, I know it's a bit off topic. It's fair enough if you haven't really got much of an answer for it. But you know, I did just wonder really, because you were talking about human rights there, and I think it got me thinking really. You know, Qatar is a place where there aren't any really. And for me, it just seems a bit hypocritical if we're going to be taking.
And you hear about British people being held in Dubai, you know, for kissing someone on the beach. You know, I mean, although I suppose you could say, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And if you go to a country, then you should behave, you know, with mores that they believe in. And similarly, I say to people who come to this country, when in Rome, do as the Romans do.
Well, that's a fair point. Mark, thank you very much. And thank you for joining us in the studio as well. Michael Fabricant there on Top 4.